before we introduce our photos, let's try and apply some brush on the bus. You start by applying the brush on the left bus. Let's select the left bus layer, apply mask here. Then also make sure that the foreground is set to black and the default to white. So let's select with the left bus layer selected, let's apply the brush on the bottom side of the bus. Cool. Now let's select the right bus, apply some marks. So with our right bus selected, let's apply the brush on it. Cool. So now we can open our photos by going to File, Open. So let's select both photos. So let's zoom in by holding the hotkey and zooming in with the scroll on the mouse. So now let's initiate the pen tool by pressing P on our keyboard. Now we can zoom in a bit so that we don't select parts that we don't want. So let's start selecting it. By holding Alt, I would like to control the flow of my selection. So hold on Alt on the keyboard and click on the middle point you see here. Okay, cool. Now we can control the flow of our selection, which makes it easier for us to control the flow of our selection. Also do that here by pressing Alt here, Alt on your keyboard, pressing and holding the Alt key on your keyboard. We do this so that we can control the flow of our selection. Cool. Let's zoom in a bit so we can see what we're selecting. We don't select unwanted parts. Knowing how to use the pen tool for selection helps a great deal. It makes you make your selection faster. Now I'll zoom out so I can see I'm eating into the image here. Let me zoom in again so that I can see most of the watch or the wristwatch. With the aid of the space bar, it easily allows you to maneuver around the image. You can press and hold on the space bar. Let's zoom out a bit so that we can see most of the image. Let's zoom in. let's change the flow of the direction of the direction of our pen tool by holding and pressing on the Alt key and clicking on the middle part, as you can see here. This allows us to control the flow of our selection. So now we are finally done selection by clicking here. As you can see, that's when you take it off of the point and you bring it close to the point, you see that circle. That means that you are done selecting. So let's do our final clicking. So now let's zoom out. So now that our subject is fully selected, we can zoom in again and right click on it and select on the make selection. So we change our radius to 0.5 or 0.5, as you can see. So we said okay. So now let's double click. The background is locked now. We want to unlock it, so we can double click it to unlock it now. Now let's apply a max. So it's done. So now we can select on the max part of the layer and say apply layer max. Now you can see that we still have a white background over here. You can easily remove that by using the quick selection the quick selection tool by pressing W on your keyboard. You can easily do that by selecting on the magic wand tool. The magic wand tool will allow you to select the white part of it. But when you do that, you see that it selects up to the rest of the artist, which you don't want. To avoid that, let's press Ctrl D to remove the selection. To avoid that, we can easily use the pen tool by pressing P on our keyboard. So let's zoom in so that we can select the white part that we don't need. Let's zoom in. So you use the space bar to allow you to maneuver around the image. You press and hold it. Yeah. Let's zoom in. So finally we are done. We can by doing so, we just right click on it and select make selection, just as we did in the previous selection. So just say okay. And this time around, press on the max. Undo it by pressing Ctrl Z. This time around, we don't need the aid of the max again. What we need is that you press Ctrl X to cut that part that we don't want. Like this. So we are done. So we can drag the image, the layer to so you can leave it. Now let's go back to the other image. So we can also select it. Cool. So now we are done. Now you right click on the selection and select make selection. Always always leave it at a radius of 0.5 pixels. Say okay. Now let's double click our layer is locked. To unlock it, we double click on an empty area. So now we can select our marks here. So now let's zoom out to see what we finally selected. Okay, cool. We are okay with the selection. Now let's accept the selection by right clicking on the max layer and saying apply layer max. So now we can go back to our move tool and drag this image to our flyer that we're working on. Cool. So now let's make sure they are placed on the uppermost part of on the topmost part of the layer, with the layers we see here. Cool. Now let's select layer 5. Let's see if we can enlarge the size by pressing Ctrl T to transform it the size. Okay. Whilst it's selected, whilst we still have the bounding box around the image, let's right click it and select on flip horizontal. Cool. So now let's see if we can resize it a bit. Okay, cool. So now let's accept it. Let's try and position layer 4 a bit here. Okay. So let's try and see if we can polish part of our image. Let's start with layer 5. Let's see if we can give some brightening to the image here. With the layer 5 selected, let's go to filter. Select camera raw filter, or using the shortcut Shift Ctrl A. Okay, so now we have the camera raw dialog box activated. We have a lot of settings over here, but right now what we are interested here is to go down here and select on vibrance and increase the amount of the vibrance to 33. Now let's move on to clarity. Clarity 14. Let's go back to the vibrance and change it to 8 minus 18. Then the texture, let's give it but it all depends on, just look at the image and see. Just be tweaking around to see it so that you don't overdo it. So 33. You can also zoom in to see what the final effect is on here. Cool. Now let's give it a dehaze amount of 8. Now let's move on to the detail tab by pressing here. Now let's give it an amount, a sharpening amount of 44. And now let's move on to the noise reduction area and give it a luminance of 23. So now let's accept it. Cool. What we can do here, another way, is that before we even started applying the camera, what you can do is let me first of all undo what we did earlier on by pressing Ctrl Z. Okay, what you can do is that first of all, to apply the filter or the camera raw filter, let's right click it and convert it to a smart object. Why are we converting it to a smart object? We are doing that so that we can easily transfer the features of one layer to another. You see what I mean as we go on. So now that we've transformed layer 5 we've converted it to a smart object, let's go to the filter again and apply a camera raw filter to it. So now let's start with the vibrance amount of -18, a texture of 33, clarity of 14, a days amount of 8. Let's go to the detail tab. Let's give it an amount of 44, and a luminance amount of 23. Let's say okay. Cool. So now, since we don't want to make things easier on our part or to cut time, we can select, we can move part of the features or the camera raw features that we've given to layer 5 to layer 4 by doing this. Make sure that the layer 4 is selected and pressing on Alt, press Alt on your keyboard, press and hold Alt on your keyboard, and just drag it to layer. Don't release the mouse, just still drag it to layer 4. What you do is that make sure that the layer 4 is selected. Then go to your layer 5, right at this side of it, press and hold Alt and just drag it. When you show that your mouse tends to a 2 figurehead or a 2 pointer head, then you release it to your layer 4. Okay, you could see that it's not working. Why is it so? It's so because if not, what you need to change, you need to transform layer 4 also to a smart object to allow that. So now with our layer 4 selected, let's right click and convert it to a smart object. Now that it's converted to a smart object, you can easily transfer the features of layer 5 to layer 4 while layer 5 still maintain its original feature. So let's do that with layer 4 selected. Let's press and hold the Alt key and drag it right to layer 4. Okay, so now you can see that layer 4 also have the same features over here. To confirm that, you can double click on the camera raw filter here. You see, so you see that the features are all the settings that we gave to layer 5 are also here, present here. So now let's say okay. Cool. Now what we can do now, since we have this illumination here, we would like to create a false appearance such that definitely when there's a light, there's definitely also a reflection. So now let's create something like a reflection on the shoulders of the artist, especially the one in the black suit, right? So we can do that by creating an empty layer. Let's create an empty layer. Now let's hide everything here, leaving layer 6 alone. And layer 5. I just want us to get something here. So now with the layer 6 selected, let's activate our brush tool. First of all, let's change our foreground colors to this colors 003 D53. Okay, let's say okay. Let's change the background to the white background to this color 03A 9E6 03A 9E6. Okay, so now let's, with our brush tool activated, on the shoulders of the artist, let's click. Let's undo what you've done. Make sure that the lighter blue is rather the foreground by pressing on X on your keyboard. Cool. Now let's brush a bit on the shoulder. Again, let's do that on the left shoulder. Cool. So now, with the layer 6 selected, we want to clip max it right onto layer 5, so that it looks as if it's on the actual shoulder. So now, with the layer 6 selected, send your mouse around this line so that it transforming to this, the clip mask feature. So now you can just clip it there. Cool. Now let's change the blend mode. So now, first of all, let's activate, or let's turn on all the other layers. Okay. So what I'm trying to see, you can see that the reflection on the right bar, you see, it reflects on the shoulders of the artist. So now let's change the blend mode of layer 6 to, let's try and see. Okay, let's use a color dodge. Yeah, I think color dodge, it's fine. Let's use color dodge. Yeah, it works here fine. Cool. Sort of. You can also do that to layer 4. Right, but before we do that, let's create an empty layer. Let's zoom in. You can hide layer 5 so you can see parts over here. So now let's reduce the size of the brush by pressing on the right square bracket on your keyboard. And you do that on the right side. Yeah. You can also do that on the left shoulder. Cool. So now let's clip max layer 7 into layer 4 by hovering around this part and pressing and holding the Alt key such that it changes to the clip max feature. So you can now clip it onto the shoulders of the artist. Cool. So now let's also change the blend mode of layer 7 to color dodge. Yeah. Cool. So now we can now activate that of layer 5 here. So now let's zoom out. Let's go back to the move tool. When you are done using the brush, just always make sure that you move you change it to the move tool. Now let's zoom out so we can see what we're doing here. If you think it's a bit harsh on the shoulder, I'm talking about the reflection of the light, you can select it and let's see if you can reduce the opacity at least a bit. Yeah, let's reduce the opacity. I think to 50. I'll make it to 50. Yeah, it's fine. Cool. Now with all the photos selected, I'm talking about from layer 6 to layer 4. Let's select it and group it by pressing Ctrl G on your keyboard. Let's rename it to photos, or let's say artist photo. Artist photos. Now with the illuminations, let's also select all the illumination. I'm talking about the illumination copy right up to the last one. So this layer, let's select it right up to the last one. From the illumination copy to the last layer, I'm talking about the left bars, by pressing shift on your keyboard and selecting the left bar so that all is selected. We can also group it by pressing Ctrl G, and let's rename that to elements. Say elements. Now let's see if you can blend. You see, let's select the artist photos, click it. Now with the layer 5 selected, let's brush part of the bottom of it so that it blends, because we don't like how it's over here, it's presented over here. So now with it selected, let's press on the brush, the max. Let's add a max to layer 5 and making sure that we have the default colors. So that the foreground color is set to black and the background color set to white. So let's activate the brush tool. Let's zoom in a bit. So with the max layer selected on layer 5, let's brush. Yeah, let's brush a bit of it so that it blends. Yeah. Let's zoom in. Let's do that for layer 4. Let's add a max to it and brush off part of the feet, or the trowel, if I may say, the trousers. So now that we've polished our images, you can realize that the photos look a bit foreign. It doesn't blend with the background. So now let's see what we can do to rectify that. So with the artist photos folder selected, let's move our mouse here, click here, select on color balance. Let's look for color balance among the lots here. Let's select color balance. Now with the midtone selected, click on preserve luminosity, click it, and now let's move the yellow level here, right, a bit of blue. Yeah, so now you can see that you're having some kind of, now it's blending. You see, formerly this side it was, now it's blending with the background a bit. This is what you want to have, so that it blends well with the background. Okay, let's see if you can push the red midtones here. If you can push the bit. Let's play with the levels and see which one works. We don't want too much of it to be red. And let's see if we can move this one over here. So let's leave it as such. Let's leave it as such. Let's see. Okay, we'll leave it at these figures. So now you can see that, but now we only want, you can see that the photos are blending well with the background, but now it's affecting the whole layers, but we want it to only affect the photos. So now we click here on this button over here, so that the effect is only applied to the photos. Finally, we are done with adding photos to the flyer. In the next episode, we'll look at adding other contents to finalize everything. Thanks for your time. Join us in the next episode.